It's March the 14th, 2022, and I'm sitting in the Houses of Parliament in front of a panel of MPs about to give evidence.
Welcome everyone to this afternoon session of the Levelling Up Housing and Communities Select Committee. First of all, great pleasure to welcome Daniel Hewitt. Daniel, can you introduce yourself?
My name's Daniel Hewitt. I'm a political correspondent for ITV News.
Thank you.
I know it all sounds a bit dry, doesn't it? But right now I'm probably feeling under more pressure than I ever have in my career. My job as a journalist is to speak in public, to the public, to question MPs, to deal with difficult exchanges. But this was different.
That everyone has valued the exposés you've done there, both, I think, on behalf of the individuals.
I wasn't listening to a word of what was being said, because inside my head it sounded like this.
I'm feeling suffocated in here, breathless, fatigue.
Been let down very badly, I'm sorry.
Not even an animal is treated like this, you know?
I can't live like it anymore.
I just had these voices of everyone I'd met in the past 12 months.
The mould is everywhere.
Where I don't want to sleep with all the damp.
All of them in the worst stages of their lives.
Imagine.
Ignored and dismissed, left totally helpless. And I've got 10 minutes.
It's not fair, I just want to leave.
To try to explain why.
I don't want to be living in these conditions.
Could you just tell us a little bit then, Dan, about how the story first came about and what you found when you did your investigations?
The pressure, the fear, was the thought of letting them down. So how had I stumbled upon a scandal that would come to dominate my every thought and spark an investigation still going on to this day?
This is dangerous housing.
Exactly.
Like, you shouldn't be here, should you?
No.
Have you told them about the problems in here?
I told them, so they don't care.
It's a story about things I never thought I'd see.
Tell them! I told them!
We're two people that are quite hard to shock after everything we've seen, but I can't get over this.
It's like a living nightmare, isn't it?
And places I never thought I'd find people living in, least of all in Britain.
Oh my God. It looks like there's been a fire.
It's terrible.
They're all these shipping containers.
Yeah, they're all shipping containers.
It's a story about power, wealth, who has it, who doesn't.
I think it's disgusting that people are living in those conditions.
We're not seriously saying the government have nothing to do with this.
The investigation has helped get some people out.
And just so overwhelmed with everything that everyone's helped me with.
Inspired others to speak out.
I didn't care that they were the biggest housing association in Europe. I wanted to teach them a lesson.
We've even forced a change in the law and seen a change in government.
I want to see those homes built that the people of this country desperately need.
And yet people remain trapped all over Britain, ignored, powerless.
My children, my husband. I have nowhere to go. I can't believe that this is happening.
Left to rot like the walls around them, with no way out.
It's not my fault, but I can't do anything about it.
That's when I started to feel trapped.
I'm Daniel Hewitt, and this is The Trapped. Episode 1. The Escape Rooms. Have you ever passed a building or a house and wondered what was inside or who lived there? Maybe it's just me. I doubt many people, if any, have ever thought that about the place I'm standing in front of right now. It's just a block of flats, a tower block, 11 stories high. It looks all right. It's got cream-coloured panels, red trimmings around each of the windows, plenty of pebble dashing. It's the kind of tower block that you've driven past 1,000 times and never given it a second thought. But behind every front door is a story of success or of struggle, of dreams or of despair. I'm a journalist. It's my job to find out what's going on behind closed doors, to get into the room. But this story starts during the COVID pandemic in March 2021, when that was near impossible. I was in Westminster as a political correspondent, which meant dialing in to those daily coronavirus press conferences.
Let's go to Dan Hewitt of ITV.
How likely is it that the current lockdown restrictions are going to last longer now, perhaps beyond the spring?
Or sitting in front of a laptop in the newsroom, interviewing politicians on Zoom.
Recording in progress.
Just double check you're in record, because otherwise it'd be a waste of everyone's time. I'm not going to say who the minister was I recently did a whole interview with and didn't record it, so That was embarrassing. Your name and title, please.
And as important as that work was, to be honest, I was bored and I was itching to get out of Westminster. When I jumped in my car and typed in Regina Road, Croydon, it wasn't for an investigation or a scandal or an expose. I certainly didn't think it would lead to me talking to you today like this. It was just a story, a bog-standard news report about poor housing conditions. We'd seen these Facebook groups with people claiming COVID was being used by landlords as an excuse not to do repairs, and one of our producers got a tip-off that there was a flat in Croydon worth checking out. And yet what was waiting for me at the end of that short drive from central London, well, it changed everything. And the story of how will, I think, tell you more about what's really happening in Britain than you'd find in any room in Whitehall. So I suppose this is an invitation to come see behind the closed doors with me, to discover the country that you really live in. Because it was here, in this tower block in front of me, behind the door of number 7, Regina Road, that I found the first dirty secret, almost by accident, when I met Franzo.
How long have you been living in this flat altogether?
I've been living here since 2014 January.
Okay, and when did it start?
This is Franzo. And if I'm honest, I'm struggling to take in anything she's saying to me.
Since 2019.
Right.
And it was in here and in the bathroom. So this wall coming down in the area.
This is her home. But I'm standing in hell. The white walls are black. Thick, furry mould grows on every surface. There's a constant drip, drip, drip of water falling on top of us as we speak, coming down the walls, through the light fittings.
All this here in the kitchen, all this black here.
Yeah.
How long has it been like that for?
So that has been like this for at least 3 going 4 months now.
4 months. So for 4 months,
yeah,
you've had a bucket in your living room,
yes,
a bath.
Yes.
With water dripping.
Yes, I have to empty it like twice a day.
In the doorway between the small living room and the kitchen sits a white plastic baby bath Franzo used to bathe her young sons. It's now catching dirty water from above. Franzo is fighting a losing battle.
And the carpet,
yeah,
let's look at this, that's for 4 months.
Yeah.
With every step my cameraman Ted and I take around this small, one-bedroom ground floor flat, I feel and hear that squelch. Everything is wet. Everything is destroyed. A small leak that began in the living room 2 years ago has been allowed to spread uncontrollably, plunging the flat into darkness.
Okay, so I've had to plug out my fridge because water has been leaking down the back of it into the electric.
So what have you been doing about keeping food fresh?
I just basically don't buy anything that requires me to put on the fridge. I'll just have takeaways. Even Christmas, it was like I had to have an umbrella or a bucket to have the Christmas dinner come into the living room. I mean, my son was sitting on this chair there and he was like squinged up at the side trying to eat his dinner because
while the water was coming down.
Dripping. Yeah.
That Christmas was tough for everyone. 2020, in lockdown. We were all trapped at home then, but how many of us were having to put an umbrella above our kids' Christmas dinner?
I'm not coping. I'll be honest, I'm not coping. My youngest, I have to be using Vicks and vapor rubs at night because he can't breathe.
Do you think this flat is making you and your kids ill?
I do. I mean, I wake up with headaches, stomach aches, all sorts every single day.
Do you?
Every day. I mean, I'm talking to you right now. I've got a migraine.
Okay, let's stop it there. Yeah, you're doing amazing.
By this point in the filming, I'm starting to struggle. My chest is tight, my breathing is laboured, the air is so thick with a suffocating stench of damp. No words can do justice to what I'm seeing in front of me. If you want to, you can see for yourself. There's a direct link in the episode notes to a website we've created to show you all the key visuals throughout this series, but I'll still do my best to describe everything. So what is it like? Well, it's like one of those escape rooms. A kind of horror movie themed game where you and a group of friends enter a hellish living space, a dungeon, where your aim is to find the clues within and get out in under an hour. But this is Franzo's life, and there is no escape.
I mean, this isn't bad housing. This is dangerous housing.
Exactly.
Like, you shouldn't be here, should you?
No.
It's at this point Franzo gets out a notepad.
Okay, so this is basically some of the calls that I've made that I've recorded. So on one of the calls, which was the 10th of December 2020, I called. They said that a plumber would come out, which he did. He came out.
But the plumber never came back. And the number she was calling wasn't some rogue landlord trying to make a few quid, refusing to do repairs. Franzo was calling the local council's housing department. This flat was owned and managed by the British state.
So this log goes all the way through to what? To like basically today, effectively?
Basically, yeah.
Of everything Franzo is being put through, the squalor, the danger, the neglect, it's these phone calls she says angered her the most. Having to explain the same problem over and over to the people she was paying rent to as her home fell apart around her.
The people that's supposed to help me, that I've been contacting, my MP, I've been contacting everybody I can in the council. I've even tried to get help through the school, and they reported me to social services. I told them the situation and they were just like, they're sorry, they can only apologise, but still no help.
You seem really calm about it.
Yeah, because there's only so much I can get angry and get upset and pull my hair out. I just feel like I'm going to kill myself if I continue like that. So I just try not to make it stress me out too much.
You've got 2 children living here.
Yes, I do.
Franzo shows me the room they have retreated to. It's the flat's only bedroom. And it's clean. Like a sanctuary in a sea of despair, the only part spared the damage.
So you're all living in this one room?
Yes.
You and the 2 boys?
Yes, this is the room that we're all living in.
But we can barely move. In front of me, the double bed takes up most of the room, and piled high around it are boxes and bags filled with clothes, shoes, toys. To my left sits a microwave on top of a small wooden table. It is in here that she and her boys cook, eat, play, and sleep.
How do your boys think about the situation? Because they know this is not okay.
They actually say, Mummy, the house is flooding and are we going to be homeless and stuff like that.
What do you say to them?
I told them the truth. I said, I don't know if anyone's going to fix it and maybe we will be homeless because everybody I turn to, no one helps. So,
how do you feel about the people that aren't fixing this problem?
Honestly.
It's here when the cracks in Franzo's calmness finally show.
I don't even know what to say because at the moment I've got so much hatred for these people that I don't have no faith in them. They're literally just sitting up there. They do nothing. I feel just neglected. I just don't even feel like I'm a human. Like, what is going on?
That's how it feels.
That's how it feels. Like, I'm yesterday's trash.
Franzo is on the ground floor. The obvious place to go next is up, to see where the leak may be coming from. Following in the footsteps of phantom repairmen, I head upstairs to the first floor of the tower block. Directly above Franzo's flat lives Leroy McNally, who works as a delivery driver.
Nice to meet you, I'm Dan. Can I come on in?
Yeah, sure.
Top man, thank you. Oh, I nearly tripped over that.
Tall and with a beaming smile, it's impossible not to smile back when Leroy answers the door, despite what we just witnessed below. He immediately lets us in as Ted starts filming.
Okay, come along, I'll show you the bedroom. You can see how bad it is in here.
I part the beaded curtain in the bedroom doorway and can't believe my eyes.
Oh my God.
Because the mould is everywhere.
It's thick, furry mould, black like ash, across the walls. Not an inch of the room has been spared.
I've had to move the furniture around so that the water doesn't land on the bed.
It looks like there's been a fire.
It's terrible.
How long has it been like this?
Since last summer.
Leroy says a repair was done on a leak in the flat above him after a tenant left the previous summer, but by autumn the dripping had resumed.
I mean, we're talking right now, and it's like we're outside and it's raining.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got 3 buckets here, 4 buckets here. So every day you put these out?
I put these out. Every 6 hours I empty them.
Every 6 hours?
Every 6 hours.
So what do you do at night?
I'll go to bed about 12, wake up about 6, empty the buckets. As you can
like
see,
Franzo's home, the buckets are everywhere. I count 5 more in the small living room, in between the soaked sofas and the television, which is playing TalkSport on mute. The wallpaper hangs from the ceilings where the constant flow of water has peeled it away. Just like downstairs, the carpets are utterly sodden.
I have to keep my shoes on.
All the time?
All the time.
Apart from when you get into bed?
Apart from when I get into bed. And when I get into bed, when I wake up in the morning, I have to put my shoes on just to come in here.
I mean, there's no part of this flat that's not either wet or damp or full of mould, right?
No part of the flat. Everywhere's completely ruined.
After a few minutes, I'm finding it hard to breathe, my eyes itching. Yet Leroy is sleeping in here every night, and like Franzo, getting no help.
And then I have to keep on ringing the council over and over again to say, what are you doing about this leak in my flat? Eventually they said to me, there's no leak in your flat.
They said there's no leak in this flat?
They said there's no leak in this flat.
When they said there's no leak, have they seen the 4 buckets of water in there?
They haven't seen the water in the buckets. They've seen this bedroom, they've seen the living room, they've seen the ceiling, they've seen the bathroom, they've seen the kitchen. I've tried going through the council, I've tried going through the repair service. All I seem to be hitting is a brick wall.
It was at that point, after calling them almost a dozen times and with everything in his home destroyed by the leak from above, that Leroy stopped contacting the council. So on he went, working shifts as a delivery driver to pay the rent, never once missing a payment, all while being dismissed and ignored by council workers who were happy to take his money for nothing in return. And yet somehow, Leroy has kept a smile on his face.
For me, he seemed to be a lot more positive than I would be if this was me, if I'm being honest.
There's nothing I can do. I mean, there's no point in getting angry.
As I head back downstairs, it becomes clear. Franzo and Leroy are handling the horrors of their new realities very differently. Yet what I saw in Leroy was in some ways more heartbreaking, more troubling than Franzo's fear. It was resignation. He's trapped, like Franzo, but has now just accepted it. It's at this point we bring in Jeff Charlton. He's an environmental hygiene expert. We'd invited him to join us in Franzo's flat to measure the scale of the horrors.
It's just not on.
And then deliver his findings to us.
A blind man could see what's wrong here. It's just not on. There's absolutely no point of doing any surveying. You know, I could take samples, it would be a waste of money, waste of time. I just can't believe that you've got water coming through a ceiling, such extensive water damage and mould. It's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. I think everybody's let you down.
They have.
It's here that Jeff makes yet another shocking discovery.
Well, do you know what? You've got water dripping through open electrics here.
Yeah,
you've got an electrocution risk.
Yeah.
When I come in, I said it couldn't be any worse unless it was plasterboard, and this is plasterboard.
Yeah.
I can't believe you're not really, really ill. I'm astonished. It's about as bad as it can get.
How long have you done this for, this job?
30 years.
How does this compare?
This is the sort of flat that I would have expected to see in a rundown area in the 1970s.
Wow.
You wouldn't think that this was in Great Britain. You wouldn't think that this was a managed house either.
And Jeff's right. How had this happened? How, in 21st century Britain, in its capital city, dripping with wealth, had human beings been left by the state to live like this? As I walk out of the tower block and into the fresh air, I notice how tight my throat feels, how breathless I've so quickly become while inside for just a few hours. The first person I called after walking outside was Imogen Barra. Imogen is the head of investigations, my boss, and the journalist I was about to spend more time with over the next few months than most of my family.
Do you remember that phone call when I called you?
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever forget it. You just said, I'm actually shaking with rage. We hadn't worked really together before, and so I didn't know what you were like. I didn't know if you were, one of those reporters that comes back from a story and is just like, this is the worst story in the world. That's why I did actually call Ted Denton, who was the cameraman with you. He's one of our most experienced camera people here. And I gave him a call and said, was that really bad? And he was like, that's like the worst thing I've ever seen in the UK, the worst thing I've ever filmed. Literally got a migraine now because the smell of the mould was just seeping through everything. And he was just like, I'm actually unwell and I'm going to take the rest of the day off because I just, So I was like, okay, well, at least Ted is on the same page as Dan. But then later on, saw the pictures and, of course, knew what you were talking about.
One extra thing that struck me sort of standing outside was just seeing how clean they were on the outside. It's almost like the money had been spent to make it nice for the people going past on trains into London from the home counties, or people walking past to the shops, and no money had been spent on the people actually living inside. And from the outside, this shiny building gave no glimpse to the horrors inside. But there were people in there who were like living in their living room, like living in tents because their bedrooms were destroyed. Despite the fact we only had 2 people, we only had Leroy and Franzo. I just kind of felt straight away this is such a much bigger story than this one block of flats. But back in the office, our bosses wanted more. They knew the footage was awful, but didn't think it was enough on its own to do a piece on the national news on one tower block in Croydon. For them, we needed something extra to give us our leading news line, what newsrooms call the top line, to bring to our viewers.
And so they were kind of like, go away, get a top line. And when I came back to you to say that, you weren't so happy about it.
I was just really cool about it. Yeah.
As you always are, super relaxed.
I'd been there and I'd seen it, and I'd looked in the whites of the eyes of these people, and I'd seen the homes. And the one thing I cannot describe, whether it's television or whether it's in this podcast, I can't describe what it smelled like. I can't describe what it felt like to be there. And to me, the idea that I needed some housing expert or some politician to tell me, to validate what I'd seen, to validate what Franzo and Leroy were going through. I knew what we had was bad, and I thought our viewers would care. I also felt this was something we hadn't seen before, or at least for a very long time. This wasn't some penny-pinching slum landlord out to earn a few quid, not answering their mobile phone, refusing to do repairs. That, frankly, sadly, wouldn't be news. This was social housing, state-run housing, with a whole housing department paid for by you and me, the taxpayer, with call handlers and repair teams, whose sole purpose was to manage and maintain people's homes, to look after their tenants, to at least answer the bloody phone. I didn't know much about housing, but like everyone, I knew about Grenfell, the biggest housing story in this country's recent history.
A horror story unfurling in West London. Families had been sleeping here. Some were still trapped inside.
They didn't treat us with respect or humanity or empathy. And if they had done, we wouldn't be sitting here now.
The echoes here were obvious. Tenants complaining, tenants ignored, tenants put in danger. And as we revisited that tragedy, one name kept coming up. Dame Judith Hackett led the review into safety regulations following the Grenfell fire. So off I went to meet her on a park bench around the corner from her home to show her what we'd found.
I don't think I've ever seen anything that bad. It's just appalling, absolutely appalling. And I think the thing that strikes me most is the sense that nobody cares. People know about it, but don't care. And the very fact that people are having to set the alarm to get up and empty buckets, it's just appalling. People are going into those buildings and seeing it and somehow absolving themselves of any responsibility by saying it's somebody else's job, not mine.
I think it was really important to have Judith Hackett because what she said was also that these pictures and the way these tenants had been treated showed that nothing had changed since Grenfell, that tenants still weren't being listened to, which I think then became our kind of raison d'etre, if you will, to go forward and say, like, why aren't these people being listened to? What is it within the system that's so broken that people like Franzo can yell for help for years and still no one listen to them?
Grenfell should have been a turning point in lots of ways, but as an absolute minimum, it should have been a turning point for how social housing tenants are treated when they complain about things. 72 people lost their lives, and yet we walk into a building in Croydon less than 4 years later, exactly the same thing is happening. Tenants are being ignored and their lives are being put in danger. And she put that into that context, which I think was really, really important. It also proved that I don't know what I'm talking about, because it gave us the top line we needed to get it on air. It wasn't just on air, we made it our top story on News at 10.
It is scarcely believable that in 2021, in the UK, one of the richest countries in the world, families are living in total squalor. And
after years of being neglected and ignored and forgotten, these escape rooms that we'd filmed in and the horror that we'd found, that was now being beamed into the homes of millions of people.
Pictures from inside a block of flats in Croydon in South London shocked the
And when the report went online, it took off. Suddenly, within a few hours, millions more people had seen it, and with it, Imogen provided an open invitation to the audience.
I just kind of thought at the last minute we should put a shout out with our email address, housingstories@itv.com, so that people could contact us. And then we put it on our website and on social media. And I'm so glad we did, because we just started getting all these pings into the inbox pretty much straight away.
Yeah, it was the biggest response to a story I've ever seen or been involved in by 100 miles. Firstly, we had people emailing expressing their total shock and disgust, some as far away as America, offering to send money and vouchers to Franzo and her boys to replace the toys and the clothes that they had lost that had been destroyed. But the vast majority of the emails we received were like this. I watched ITV News this evening and was shocked to see that other people are treated the same as me. I am disabled and housebound.
I've been battling 12 years to sort my heating out.
I've lived in a nightmare.
I've lived without hot water
you would
for
think
over
that it'd be
a year.
easy to make a complaint and not get threatened with them
warmer.
getting rid of you.
The ceiling came down. My daughter and I had now been exposed to the asbestos.
I have a 15-week-old baby. Repairs for over 10
I pay rent
years.
every month.
Councils
I think they
have gotten
forget
away
that
with it
people
for
in social
far too
housing
long,
are human beings.
and tenants have no voice.
Please help us, because our lives matter too. The emails were being sent from people across London, from Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, Crawley, even down to Cornwall.
Yeah, and this was no longer an isolated story of neglect in one tower block in South London. What we discovered in Regina Road was happening everywhere. Next time on The Trapped.
Can you see this? This is crazy.
The world comes caving in on more tenants.
No, they're not going to come and kill me here. They need to move me now.
We demand answers from the people who left Franzo and Leroy in squalor.
I've not had an opportunity like
What have you been doing that's
said,
more important than contacting the woman living in the worst housing conditions in Britain?
No, but yeah.
And for others, the fight back begins.
I thought I have to embarrass them. I have to shame them. I have to show people what's actually been happening.
If you want to see any of the visuals from this series, head to thetrapped.co.uk or follow the link in the show notes. If you are in bad housing or your living situation is under threat, you'll also find a full list of people to contact to get help. The Trapped is presented by me, Daniel Hewitt, alongside Imogen Barra. It's written by myself and David Williams, with archiving by Alpha Ceesay and Lauren Aarons. Audio production and sound design is by Make Parry and Jack Soper. The series is produced and directed by David Williams. The executive producers are Matt Williams and Ed Saunt.